Today's build is making a basketball retriever or a rebounder so that the basketball, no matter where it's coming from, lands in the same spot every time. And it only costs about $5 to make. Interested? Here we go. Criteria for this build is it had to be readily available, fit a basketball, cheap to make, and cheap to buy the resources. So a bucket seemed to be the perfect solution. And this is what I came up with. I'm going to cut this out, go across here, heat up, and make a ramp. I've noted that most buckets come with these little marks on the side. So I use that as my halfway point. And I just marked it here, found the center point, marked that. Then I came up vertical from there. And this is just under 25 centimeters or just under 10 inches from here to here. And that allows the basketball to pass through the bucket. I'm going to use a heat gun and actually make a bend here. Then once I got the center point here, I went on both sides to make the ramp and marked 2 locations, and that happens to be just over 8 inches or right around 21 centimeters. So I had this point here of the ramp, and then I just took a piece of tape as a marker on the bucket so that I have a way to know where I'm going to cut. So I'm going to drill a hole here at all these different points, and then use a hacksaw, cut into the bucket here, cut down that line, and then it's time for the heating. Now, one of the things I was figuring that might be a bit of a challenge is this center area here. You can see that I went and drew a line across here where it hits these points, which was part of the mold. Drill a whole bunch of little holes here so that I can cut this piece out and still use the structure that's here. I'm going to have a little notch here and a notch here. It will bend nicely right along this line. At least that's my plan, so we'll see how it goes from there. Here is the progress so far. Using a 11/64 inch drill bit, I made a bunch of holes in that circle I was talking about. And I made them as close together as possible. Then I'm using the drill bit almost as a router to cut through the little pieces left in that area. And now I'm using a half round file to clean that up and also to make some grooves here for the bend on the inside circle. And that gave me the nice little groove I'm looking for. So now, time to cut out these sides with a combination of mini hacksaw and regular hacksaw. So just line it up, follow the masking tape as the guide, and start cutting. So using the flat hacksaw just enough to get in here, I thought was working really good. And then I was having problems trying to figure out how I was going to cut down this slope because the hacksaw really is not going to work well flat. So then I drilled a whole bunch of holes with the smallest drill I had. You know what? I can't get it in still because of the pieces of plastic between the holes. So I took a box cutter and went in there and popped those out, and they went so good. And then I'm just like, hey, let's just keep going. And you know what? The box cutter is the best way to cut this bucket. Live and learn. And the great thing about the box cutter is it makes a nice smooth edge that doesn't require a lot of post-work sanding, filing, whatever. So box cutter. I did finish the cuts, and then I decided I was just going to see if I could bend this piece. Now, I can bend that piece. The problem is, you can see right here that it's tearing. But it looks like I might have to figure out a way to reinforce this thing, because constant use, it's just going to get worse. So I'm going to have to somehow come up with a way, maybe on the back side, to reinforce this guy once I get the right angle. As you can see, so that's kind of what my design is entailed. Then the ball comes down here, bounces, and then goes straight in the direction of this channel. This is the case of put a project away for a while, think on it, come back and do some more sketching on the back. So I'm trying to make it look less like a bucket. This kind of almost looks like a helmet, doesn't it? Future build! Coming to you around Halloween. Anyway, and because there's so much tape here, I wanted to make sure that I was cutting out the right areas. So we'll drill those like we did before, and then I'm going to use the box cutter and just trace down here between the holes and cut this panel out. At least that's my plan. Hopefully I don't have to go back and get another bucket. Cutting away from yourself and down on a strong base. Ever so carefully cut those windows out and they'll look like this. And then I harvested this panel, which is going to go in here. Next thing I'm going to do is put a heat gun there, put a center on that, and then just bend that down to reinforce this area right here. And this is fairly easy compared to cutting this. You just get in here, mark the surface that you're going to cut, carefully push down on it in both directions. It should pop right off. This plastic is awesome. I mean, $3 you get all this plastic. I'm thinking there's a lot of potential in bucket plastic. When I do things like this, I want to make sure that I'm safe. First of all, I have a pretty heavy duty mask. This plastic, any plastic, gives off vapors. A COVID mask really isn't going to cut it. And you may not need something as this strong, but I have it, so that's where I'm going to use it. Leather gloves, this big hinge that I use for bending plastics, and also these two metal plates. They go over those electrical boxes. And here's my heat gun. It just happens to be a Wagner. You can see it's dented on top because I've dropped it a couple times. This thing is like 7 years old and has served me well, and it costs around $20. If you're interested on any of these things, I'll post them down below. Always, safety glasses. You only have 2 eyes. Don't lose them. So there you go. It didn't take much time at all to bend that guy. It's pretty soft plastic. Now it's time to do the bucket. Back inside, I've pre-drilled these holes here, and I've also cut off the corners so that it sits flush right there up against the wall. I added a 2-inch corner brace, and then on the back side I have 4 of these number 10 24 coarse nylon lock nuts, and then number 10 washers to go with the number 10 1/2-inch 24 machine screws. So all number 10 hardware right here. This probably wouldn't have ripped if I would have hit it with the heat gun. The heat gun was great at bending this plastic, but if you wanted a cleaner look, so all you would see is the screws and the washers on this side, then you could just put that on the back. It might actually be a little stronger. That's all bolted down nice and tight, and I think it gives it a lot more strength. Originally I was just going to go with the bucket, but I really don't think it would have survived. You've got the bucket hanging down. It's actually connected right up here, and then you have the connectors here. 2 on the side, 1 in the back, and 1 in the front. And then this is just slid in there with some stopper knots, and this is just a regular overhand knot there. So let's test it out and see how it does. I've got some questions about my backstop that I want to answer. You can see that it's down in the lower position. The whole design with these pivots here and here with the bungees is so that you can move it up and down and get it right up to the height that you want. I'll post up there and down below links to how you can make one of these for around $30 to $40. Here we go, the initial testing of this basketball rebounder retriever. It doesn't matter where you shoot from, it always comes back right to the spot. Now I'm going to show you how to make the 4 guides that go from the basketball hoop down to the rebounding bucket. These all start out at 20 inches long. Then once they're tied up, the loops are about 13 inches long. These knots are about 1.5 inches, 1.75 inches, and that's what you need to loop around the top of the hoop. And then this is just a stopper knot. When I did my first testing outside, the bucket was swaying a little bit too much for my liking, so I've actually incorporated a couple stiffeners to make the bucket work better. So this is 1/4 inch outer diameter, 0.17 inch inner diameter, clear vinyl tubing, 10.5 inches long. And that's going to be for the front. And then for the back, I want a little bit of slope from, so when the ball comes in, it kind of helps roll out a little bit. So I've actually cut a second piece, 9.75 inches. Cord is just 325 paracord. You can use whatever color you want. So I was having problems snaking it through the vinyl tubing, so I came up with this 22 gauge paddle wire. This will help you bring the cord right through. The sides, I'm just going to leave it like this for now. I might actually convert them to these stiffened versions, but we'll see. Okay, so I'm going to take some 14 gauge wire now to stiffen it up a little bit more to there, and then I'm going to cut it off right here, about 1/2 inch. Take some needle nose pliers and just fold it over. And then I'll do the same on this end. So this is just an easy overhand knot to tie one of those. All you do is you take enough cord, probably 3 inches in this case, because you want a big loop. Straighten it out. And you want the loop to be about 1.75 inches long here. And when you cut cord, you want to always make sure that you hit it with a little bit of fire scarecrow so that you can melt the edges and they won't fray. And the stopper knot is just 2 loops, and you run the end through, and then this is the part that stays in the bucket. Just about 1 inch difference between the front and the back end. So as I continued on with this project, I was reminded of my test pilot school days and the mantra we used to say when we had so much work to do: perfection is the arch enemy of good enough. And this project is becoming like that to some extent. I showed you earlier the first test run outside, and you could have easily gone with that standard version. This project at that point, for me, just didn't have enough pizzazz. It was all about taking this bucket and making it look less like a bucket. I took a straight cutter and I took the rim off the top, and so now I have a little bit of a symmetry thing going on here, a nice little lip here. Still maybe looks like a bucket. So then I went kind of a little more designish and came up with this idea. And all I did is I found the center line of this panel right here, and it happened to be a little over 9 inches. And then I just spaced these out. That's 1 inch, 1 inch, and this is a 2-inch hole saw. So I just went through here and very patiently and carefully centered that and drilled some holes in there on the back and on the side, just to make it look a little more interesting. Lots of circles going on here. And that actually, that's a 2-inch hole too, so it kind of all just goes together. I guess I could go really wacky, put another hole here and some holes in here, and I initially had thought about that, but I want the strength in the little ramp here, and I am coloring up the little angles here because I have them exposed. Again, you could have easily put them on this side and then you wouldn't have to worry about it. You could just have like 8 little silver screws hanging out if you care about that. And then I just took this deburring tool and just went on the inside and the outside and cleaned up the holes nice and smooth, and actually used the deburring tool. This comes with like 20 blades, I think. I'll post it down below. It's a real good one. And you've got a little area here that stores the extra blades. And this actually comes and extends out to a distance. And sometimes that's real convenient when you're trying to reach in someplace and clean something out. I have several deburring tools, and this is my favorite. I thought the silver finish on these corner braces was a bit too much. So I took a permanent marker and just went over the metal part and then hit it with a semi-clear gloss. And I really like the finish on that. I used a similar approach on my big circle maker. It gives you a very interesting, almost opaque color. Okay, we've installed the bottom brackets. Now it's just a matter of putting on the final touches. And all you do is just take where the stopper knot is and you just push down and it locks in right there like that. All I did is I drilled a hole and just cut a little groove there to slide the support in place. Now, since you got two of these, I want the shorter one in the back just to give it a little bit of a slope. There we go. So now it's time to take this outside, put it on the hoop, and do some final testing. This is the easiest way to put it on. Lower the hoop, take off these 4 north, west, south loops, and then just take it and do the same thing you do with the basketball hoop. You just put it on like that, and it will hang there all day long, all year long, all season long. You could obviously raise it or lower it, but I kind of like it right here. Thumbs up and comments always appreciated. I'd be really interested to hear whether or not you like that distance here or you want to raise it up and down. If you're interested in sports builds, designs of all kinds, home repairs, even cosplay and prop making, check out my channel and please subscribe, because you never know what you're gonna see.